In the second video, I'm going to give you your feedback on question 3 from the chapter discussion. This was about what was manorialism, why was it significant? Manorialism is the name given to an economic system based on the manor. The manor was the basic building block of the medieval rural society. You could think of it as being like a large farm or a village. The manor was dominated by a lord, or more often the lord's steward, his manager. A big lord like the king or a major nobleman or the church would delegate running the manor to the steward. It was inhabited by peasants who were usually serfs, that is, unfree peasants who were bound by law to work for the lord. They would work on large open fields. There was no fencing or anything dividing off the fields. Next week, we'll see a video about life as a peasant, which will show how that worked in practice. And the open fields were worked by the whole community. Each peasant would have a strip or strips within each of the 3 fields. One would grow a crop in the fall, one in the spring, one would be left fallow, that is left empty to recover. And each year, the crops would be rotated. So within a 3-year span, every open field was used for a different crop or was allowed to lie fallow. This enabled the soil not to be exhausted, and the peasants would have their holdings scattered among those different fields. There was also what was known as the demesne, land which was held directly by the lord. All of the land was the lord's in theory. He merely loaned it to the peasants in return for their labor. But as well as working their land, the peasants also had to work the lord's demesne as well. There was also land there to support the church, and as well as working the church's land, the peasants would have to pay tithes, that is 1 in 10 of their harvest, over to the church. As well as having to work for their lord, the peasants also had to pay him, for example, to use the mill to grind their corn or to use the oven to bake their bread. They would have to pay for the right to inherit land, the right to get married, etc., etc. Serfdom, this situation of being an unfree peasant on the lord's manor, was deeply resented by peasants, would be in later centuries the cause of rebellion and resistance. Why was manorialism significant? Well, in the emerging feudal system that was coming about in the centuries after Charlemagne, this was a basic element at the bottom of that society. Land was held from a superior in return for service. Lords held their land from the king, knights from their lords, and they would provide service in a military form. Serfs had no land of their own. They were provided land by the lord, and in return were forced to work for him and pay these various fines and duties that were due to the lord. It was also significant because it actually boosted the economy. We think of the manorial or feudal system as quotes unquote backwards economically, but in fact this localization of power to the lord on the manor enabled investment in the land and actually boosted the output of Europe's agriculture and by extension boosted Europe's economy.